Christie also said he spoke with Governor Cuomo earlier today about lifting those travel bans in both states. The governor is speaking right now, and let's listen.
So there were variances within the New York City area, but basically less than predicted, which was good news. Long Island was much harder hit than the New York City area, 16 inches on Long Island. Suffolk County is still getting hit very hard, and Suffolk County is where we have serious issues. The track of the storm as it moved north, Suffolk County is the far end of Long Island, Montauk Point, and they have significant issues and continue to have blizzard-like conditions, 12 inches of snow, 14 inches of snow. And we will be redeploying much of the equipment from the New York City area, Mid-Hudson area, to Long Island and specifically to Suffolk. We are lifting all the traffic bans on the roads at 8 o'clock. Nassau, Suffolk, New York City, Westchester, Rockland, Ulster, the 13-county area that was affected will all be lifted at 8 o'clock. We coordinated that with the Governor of New Jersey, Chris Christie, who I spoke with this morning. Obviously, you can't open the traffic ban on one state unless you're coordinated with the other states, because you don't want people on the roads in New Jersey trying to get to New York, but they can't get to New York, and vice versa. So we have a coordinated opening with Governor Chris Christie at 8 o'clock. I also spoke with Governor Malloy, Governor of Connecticut. They also have a varied situation, and they're making determinations now to open parts of their roads, and parts will remain closed. We're coordinating with them. The MTA is in the process of bringing the trains back out, subway and rail. They were put away yesterday, last night, late at night in an area where they would be protected from the weather. They are now redeploying as we speak. Service will begin coming online at 9 o'clock. By noon, the system should be back to Sunday service, which is roughly 60% of the weekday service. The bridges and tunnels will be open. The path will be coming online at 9:30. The airports, the Port Authority has done a very good job at clearing the airports. The problem are the cancellations by the airlines, and there are heavy cancellations of flights still. On that, people would have to check with their specific airline. Let me make a point that while the roads are open, that is not to say that unless you need to be on the roads, you should be on the roads. The roads are still dangerous, and they are passable, but there is a level of ice under the snow in many areas, and if you don't have to travel today, you really don't want to be traveling today. And as people get on the roads this morning, I would expect delays because even with the plows and even with the salting and chemical preparation, the roads are still, while passable, they are not clear. So we don't want to give people a false sense of security. If you have to travel, you can, but if it's non-essential, we wouldn't recommend it. Let me stop there, and whatever questions you have or additional details you would like.
In the past, you have sort of expressed frustration with the weather modeling and said that the state should come up with its own. Do you feel the same about this storm that we're trying to combat bad?
Well, just for those people who may have missed it, Josh, we had a storm several weeks ago where I believe the forecast was for a relatively modest amount of snow, and we then had 7 feet of snow in Buffalo. And we didn't close roads, et cetera, because we weren't anticipating 7 feet of snow. I made a comment that the weather forecast was not 100% accurate, which offended weather forecasters all across the country. And I was roundly berated for days for criticizing the weather forecast. So on the theory of live and learn and a little wiser, Weather forecasters do the best they can, and we respond to the best information that we have. We are in the process of installing a weather system in the state of New York exclusively. That will be the most sophisticated weather system in the country. Why? Because we make big decisions based on these weather forecasts. We decided not to close the roads in Buffalo several weeks ago. We then had 7 feet of snow. We had people stranded on roads for 12, 15, 20 hours. You can have a significant loss of life in these situations. It's also very expensive. We rely on the weather forecast to deploy equipment all across the state. We have brought hundreds of pieces of equipment from upstate New York to downstate New York. This was a very expensive exercise. To the extent you close mass transit, you affect businesses, etc. So you make big decisions based on this information. You want the best information that you have. And in this state, we're going to be tripling the number of weather detection stations that we have. So we'll have a much more accurate read of the weather in this state, what it's affecting, where there's heavy rainfall, where there's potential for flooding, etc. So I feel good about that. Otherwise, you act on the information that you have at the time. I'll also say this, the predictions that we acted on, obviously in this region, there was less snow than anticipated. What we did then was impose a travel ban at 11 o'clock, and we got the trains and the rails put away, so to speak, at 11 o'clock. I don't know that net, Josh, that didn't wind up saving us time. Because the roads were empty, we could actually plow the roads. What very often happens is you get a couple of cars stuck on a highway, it backs everything up, and the plows can't do their job. So we did a good job clearing the roads because they were empty. The system is going to come back online much faster than it would have if the trains were exposed to the conditions and they were shoveling out this morning. So we were just chatting inside, if you tally it up, I don't know that this wasn't the more prudent course of action in any event, because at the end of the day, it may actually have brought us back to full operating capacity sooner. But I do not criticize weather forecasters. I learned.
Because you're second guessing in particular about the decision to shut down the underground portions of the subway, have you had second thoughts at all about that call?
No, I think it's very hard first to what is underground and what is exposed to the elements is a very precise science. So that's difficult to do. But I think the decision to err on the side of caution, especially given the information that we had at the time, is put us in a position where the system will come online faster this morning. Tom, you want to add anything?
No, I think you said it very well. When you try to run a service and you try to run a service that's not your regular service, because nothing in our system basically stays underground with the exception of a couple lines. Almost all of them go outdoors and indoors. You have to cut a special schedule. It's tough to run, and when you're trying to do that as well as clean the right-of-way and restore service when you've got a blizzard, that's hard to do both. So I think the governor stated it well. We're well in a position to be able to get the service back much faster. If you remember 2010, December 26, when we had 40-some trains stranded and 600 buses stranded for a 20-inch snowstorm, that informed us very, very well going forward that to close portions of the system, protect the equipment, and shovel out quicker is the better way to go.
Tom, you said that the system, or the governor said that the system will be back 60% by noon. When will it be at full capacity?
Well, for the remainder today, we'll probably run a Sunday schedule, but we expect to be back to a full weekday schedule tomorrow.
And how long does it take once you put the trains underground? How long does it really take to get them up to full capacity?
There's a number of issues. It takes us a few hours because you have to bring them in off. Instead of the crews reporting to their normal yard locations, they have to pick up the trains, then pick up conductors. but you've got to get crews and then put them in service. For the most part, the tracks are clear, but we've got to shovel platforms and stairways.
Governor, could you, and Tom, Mr. Bringas, could you walk us through some of the discussions about closing down the subway? Did you see a scenario ever where you were issuing a warning and closing the roads, but leaving the subways open?
Oh, yeah, we consider all the scenarios all day long. Yesterday, we were meeting constantly. We put out a preliminary plan at about noon, if you recall. We then said we'll finalize the plan at 4 o'clock when we get the 4 o'clock weather forecast, because that was going to be the best information we were going to have before making our final determinations. The 4 o'clock forecast actually was the same or worse for Long Island. So there are a number of variables. We've done it all different ways. We've left the roads open, closed the subway system, closed the subway system, vice versa. So it depends on the facts and circumstances that we're dealing with. And you have the best information that you can. And then my attitude is I would rather, if there's a lean one way or the other, if you will, lean towards safety, because I've seen the consequences the other way, and it gets very frightening very quickly. And I've seen people put in extraordinarily dangerous situations. And we've had people die in storms. So I'd much rather be in a situation where we say we got lucky than saying we didn't get lucky and somebody died.
Chairman, a lot of us saw trains running on the above-ground lines last night. Can you explain why there were trains running in the system?
There's a difference between running what we call an equipment train and one with passenger service. Those trains run to try to keep the line open, and they're not running to schedule, nor are they making station stops. And we don't run them regularly. We run them irregularly to keep the line clear. So in any railroad, that's a normal process that's done. So you try to keep the line clear by running equipment, non-revenue service trains.
The briefings, how are you doing with Mayor de Blasio?
If it was just, when it's just one area, we do. I did briefings with Nassau yesterday. I did briefings with Suffolk yesterday. When we had the Buffalo storm, I did briefings with Buffalo, and it depends on what region is affected. This is a 13-county region. We could invite all 13 local officials here today, but that's a lot of officials. So it's for a very large area, so we do it this way. I'll be going out to Long Island again, which is the area that is hardest hit, and I'll be doing a briefing this afternoon in Suffolk.
Governor, can I ask you as to how much is it going to cost to bring the equipment down and close the subway system?
Yeah, I don't know if maybe Tom has an estimate. I don't know what the actual cost is. There is a cost attached to it. We transported equipment, Marcia, from upstate New York to downstate New York. There was a cost to that. We keep referring back to the Buffalo storm several weeks ago. Buffalo storm, we had equipment from New York City, Nassau, Suffolk, go up to Buffalo. This storm, Buffalo, Syracuse sent equipment down. So there is a cost to that, no doubt. I don't think it is, in the scope of things, extraordinary, but it's one of the costs of doing business, and we factor that in, things like snow removal, salt purchases, overtime for crew to handle storms. These are factored in the budget, and this was not exceptional to that process. I'm sure Tom will say he needs a budget increase because of this, but Tom was going to say he needed a budget increase anyway, so.
Tom, could you give us some sort of timeframe for restarting Metro North service and Long Island Railroad service and New York City bus service? And Kat also a question about fast train service timeframe?
The governor may have stated it before you came in, but we're ramping up service now. We expect to be at a full Sunday schedule for the 2 commuter railroads, so it'll be exactly as the schedule's posted for the 2 commuter railroads, and a level of service equivalent to Sunday service for the subway by noon, and buses.
And that stays until tomorrow?
Stays throughout the remainder today, and tomorrow will be a full weekday schedule.
Pat, did you want to have?
Yeah, Andrew, as the governor said, path service will resume on a weekend basis by 9:30. We're going to run weekend service all day, and just as is the case with the MTA, path will resume normal weekday service tomorrow morning.
So are you doing this Sunday service because you think that the number of people coming into the city or wanting to use the buses, subways, and trains will be less because of the storm, or is it because you can't get the people in?
It's more the latter. It's the crewing issue. To make sure, and then it's a predictable level for people to know. We do expect routing to be lower, but it's the crewing issue that's driving it right now for us.
Because the crews have to come in from where
They have to come in from wherever they're home, and in some cases they have to drive to a location. We'll have equipment trains trying to get them in, and they'll take our existing services. But to be able to project a level of service at noon, and what we expect to see today, it's a Sunday level of service.
And also, let's not lean too far the other way. If you are commuting from or driving in on the roads from Long Island, it is an ugly, dangerous drive. If you're coming in from Westchester North, it is a dangerous drive. The roads are passable. Passable does not mean they are clear, does not mean there's not snow and ice on the road. And the roads are dangerous. And as people enter the roads, you will see significant traffic delays if there's any volume. So people should keep that in mind.
Tom, where does this snowstorm stack up compared to previous snowstorms in Delaware, given what we know right now?
Given the level of snowfall that we've seen in the western portions of the system, which is 4 to 6 so far, and a few more inches today. If you compare it with December 26, 2010, which was 20 inches. But it's not just snowfall, it's also rate of snowfall per hour and wind. And in that snowstorm, we did have blizzard conditions. This we did not. So there's a number of different factors. You're only as good as your last snowstorm, though.
Andrew, I think one way to judge these things, maybe the priority way to judge these things, is terms of loss of human life. And I think the actions that the governor took over the last 24 hours, the fact that no human life was injured, and as far as we know, no human life was lost, and as far as we know, nobody was injured in a transportation-related injury, I think speaks for itself.
You know, this is an imprecise science. I remember speaking about past storms, besides snowstorms. If you remember Hurricane Irene, Hurricane Lee, Mayor Bloomberg at the time, we made all sorts of precautions for New York City. It was supposed to hit New York City. We put the subway system away. One of the first times we did, we closed systems. And then the storm basically grazed New York City. New York City said, you know, nothing happened. It was the non-event. But upstate New York got devastated by the storm. And we weren't prepared for upstate New York because we had deployed for downstate New York. And this was a storm that was tracked every night on the news. You could see the track of the storm moving up the coast. So that's why we want to put in the most sophisticated system we can in the state. But it is still weather, and that is the nature of the beast. There's a certain imprecision. And you plan the best you can, and you lean towards safety.
Do you have any estimates about lost business revenue?
No, but remember what we did. We closed the roads at 11 o'clock at night. I don't know how much business you do after 11 o'clock at night anyway, depending on your business. We will resume service starting 9 o'clock, ramping up till noon. I'm sure there'll be some loss of business, but we don't have those estimates.
Governor, it's a Chinese takeout.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly. I think they were operating now.
So the delivery guys right in front.
That's right. I don't think we had bicycles included in the travel ban.
In New York City it was.
Oh, was it?
Do you have any info on the number of violations or if anyone was cited? Did you hear any?
Actually, I heard that compliance was very high. We have Superintendent of State Police who's here.
We had no issues overnight for policing. You know, New Yorkers were great. They heeded the warning. They stayed off the roads. They allowed the plows to operate, emergency vehicles to get around. I was out on the roads early this morning, and it was nothing but emergency vehicles out, so no issues.
And again, remember the story on Long Island is very different than what you're seeing here. And Manhattan, New York City tends to have one look in these situations, but the surrounding areas look much different. I can assure you that.
Can you talk about what's going on in Long Island and what you intend to do in terms of keeping the travel ban in place and what's going to happen in terms of the Long Island Railroad and transportation out in Suffolk County?
Even on Long Island, you have to differentiate between Nassau and Suffolk. Suffolk was hit much harder than Nassau was. We're deploying equipment now as we speak to Suffolk. I spoke to County Executive Stephen Ballone from Suffolk, and they have still blizzard-like conditions. The LIRR service, I believe, is coming online slower in Suffolk. Maybe Jim or Tom knows. And we are still deploying equipment there. We're lifting the travel ban, but the roads are significantly more affected in Suffolk than anywhere else in the downstate area.
Electric service west of Babylon, Ronkonkoma, and Huntington. It's a diesel service east of that point. Diesel equipment operates better in the snow, but there are probably 2 foot of snowfall, and there'll be drifts. So later today, we'll know exactly when we'll be able to run full service out
So
there.
you're not opening service at all to Suffolk?
Not at noon. We're gonna have the prognosis in terms of once we start running trains out there and see what we've got, but it would be later in the day.
No, Suffolk is a different situation. I also want to thank Governor Christie and Governor Malloy of Connecticut for their coordination. These are difficult situations, and again, no one state can really act on its own. So I want to thank them very much for their cooperation. And we'll keep you updated throughout the day as to the rate of progress, especially on Long Island. Thank you all very much.